Hi, I am Bree Mills.
Can you give me a quick synopsis?
Sure, of the film today, right? Yeah. Perspective is one of the features that Adult Time released this year. It was released as both an unrated mainstream feature film cut and as an extended X-rated series, which will debut on Adult Time on September 26, 2019. We're here at the premiere, and it's a bit of a difficult film to give a synopsis about without giving too much away, but I will say it's a film about the impact that emotion has on people, particularly under moments of great duress. The more emotional you get, the less and less logical you can be, and the more you're likely to do things that you never normally would. And this is definitely a testament to that experience in this film, and it's centered around a couple in the final dysfunctional days of their marriage.
Is this story based on something that happened in your life or purely fictional?
The story is based, there's certainly a lot of myself in this story. As a writer, I put a lot of my own experience into the stories that I write, really just as a creative foundation for myself. So certainly in relationships that I've been in over the years, there have been instances of deception and infidelity, and one in particular that really struck me and really affected me in my life. An instance where my partner at the time was having an affair with my best friend at the time, and I discovered it one day while the three of us were having coffee together, because I think there had been some correspondence left open. And that moment, it's always stuck with me because it was such an odd moment to find myself in. You know, this moment where you realize that two people who you love and trust have been keeping something from you, but at the same point there's been a little bit of a shift of power because all of a sudden you have knowledge of this secret and they do not know that you know. So what does somebody do in a circumstance like that? And in my case, you know, I did what probably many people would do, which I didn't do anything yet till I uncovered the extent of what was going on. I kind of went into detective mode, certainly over the years I have thought about how I felt in that moment and how I felt in the days after discovering that secret, and I really used that foundation to create the character of Daniel, who in many ways at the beginning of this film, Seth's character Daniel is modeled after myself. It is me. It was a lot of the way that I felt and I reacted in that circumstance, similar, kind of as the story progresses and we feel real empathy for Daniel's perspective, by the time we get to the kind of final confrontation, or what seems like the final confrontation, where we felt all this empathy and sympathy with him, we realize that, of course, when we go back and examine the same story from a different pair of eyes, from his wife's perspective, that perhaps it's not quite the same story that we've been led to believe is true. And certainly in my own experience in relationships, one thing I've learned over the years is that no matter how much conviction you might have on a subject, your partner may see the exact same thing in a very different way. So who knows what the truth really is.
The treatment, the story for this, was it written specifically for this? Did Gamma come to your Adult Time and say, we want to do a big film this year? And you say, great, I have this great idea I always wanted to do?
Sure. Well, I'm the chief creative officer at Adult Time, so I oversee our content strategy and a lot of our content production, and I'm a very active filmmaker myself within our roster of producers. So Adult Time knew that they were going to put out several features this year, two that I was going to write and direct. And I did. I wrote a lesbian biopic, actually, about my own life coming of age as a gay teenager in the 90s, called Teenage Lesbian, and then I knew I was going to do this one to sort of fit in the traditional, I guess, boy-girl feature category. And but I have a tremendous amount of autonomy and creative freedom within Adult Time. I sort of said, this is a story I want to tell, and these are the people I want to work with, and I had full support from everyone at Adult Time, and that's what makes Adult Time such an amazing platform for content creators like myself.
Did you have these specific actors in mind when you wrote the script?
Yep. So one of the very first things that I knew was going to happen with this project was the casting of Angela and Seth. So I really wrote this project with those two actors in mind. From the very beginning, they were Jennifer and Daniel Morris in my head. I approached them months and months in advance, and we all kind of agreed to do this, to take this journey together, and it really was a journey. I have never seen such commitment from two actors in my career in terms of just the amount of time and energy invested by both of them during pre-production to get into the skins and into the mindsets of their characters. I am very fortunate that I can kind of pick and choose who I want to work with, and I have a tendency for my larger scale projects to surround myself with actors that I know well, that I've worked well with. So the remaining supportive players in the cast are all regular adult time actors, performers that I work with regularly, and I developed their characters as well, knowing who were going to be the people that would be coming in to bring those characters to life.
Was this an independent film where you had to kind of squeeze the sex into it, or is this a sex film that you made an independent film?
It's a good question. I think within my own creative journey as a filmmaker, I've always, and certainly in the last few years, I've really wanted to challenge a lot of the traditional structure of adult productions that are very like, do a story setup and then have a sex scene that may or may not be connected to the story, and you have to squeeze in this many sex scenes in a film, you know, to have it be considered for a feature, and all of these things. I've really kind of deconstructed that. So in the case of Perspective as a story, because it's a story about relationships, inevitably sex is part of that story, but there is no interruption between the story and the sex. They're not two separate things, they very much coexist. And I intentionally did not want to make a softcore and hardcore version of this film. I wanted to make primarily a feature film that could be shown in any theater, that could achieve an R-rated cut, because there's plenty of films and television shows these days that depict sex and sexuality up to a certain point. Why couldn't we as well? And then the challenge for myself when filming it was to understand where the unrated film would cut and where the X-rated film would not cut, and doing some nuances in the filming of those transitions in and out of each sex scene. So it was quite a different filming experience than when you'd shoot traditional softcore and hardcore, but I think it really got everybody centered around the right mindset when making the film, because we were making a feature film. That was the goal. And we knew that there would be kind of like an accordion. There would be a version that would be a bit more condensed, and then there would be a version that didn't include the same censorship. So, you know, I think having that focus on making the film really helped to make it the project that it ultimately ended up being, and it gives us two amazing opportunities to showcase the film. So, you know, all of Adult Time's members can check out the X-rated version, but they can also watch the unrated version, because we're putting that in Adult Time as well, and we were able to take this film and submit it to film festivals, and working with a mainstream media aggregator to try to submit it to mainstream SVOD platforms. So really, you know, it gives us a lot more opportunity to showcase the range of talent than you're able to do just with a hardcore or softcore version. And I think there's like 10 sex sequences in the film or something. They're all peppered throughout, so no more of these like 45-minute breaks. It's like 20 minutes of sex there, 10 minutes of sex there. It's all throughout the story.
You're involved in the entire process, the post, the whole bit?
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm quite involved, very hands-on in my projects. So obviously I wrote the project. I worked very closely during pre-production with the actors in terms of rehearsals and character development, with our production designer, with our director of photography. I scouted locations. I, you know, really oversaw the entire set design and bringing in a lot of really talented people to work with me. Same thing in post-production, overseeing all of the edits, all of the scoring. You could say I'm a bit of a control freak, so I was pretty involved.
For you, how much of your original idea will we see on screen tonight?
You know, it's actually quite incredible and pretty humbling to see. There was a lot of footage shot for this film. It's a film that has many, many, many layers to it. I'll admit, because we shot everything out of sequence the way that we had to shoot this story, kind of shooting two sides of the same story simultaneously, there were moments when I was filming it where I'm like, man, I don't know how this is going to turn out, you know, because you're seeing a million pieces, and it's certainly the most complicated production I've ever done in terms of just the scope of the footage. I think our editor spent over 300 hours editing the film, and but I'm happy to say that every single thing that we sought out to shoot ended up in the final film. And that, you know, I storyboarded a lot of this, so I was very particular on, you know, angles I wanted and cuts I wanted, and almost all of that initial visioning translated into the final film. So I think for myself, it's the film that I probably have my hands the most on from a complete creative perspective, and it's very rewarding to see that it came together. It wasn't a disaster; it came together on screen in the final project.